Hi there. The idea of giving the audience a reason to listen to you might seem a little bit redundant if you've already got an audience for your presentation. However, getting an audience to look at your presentation is just the first hurdle. Engaging the interest of your audience and keeping them interested in your presentation is another thing entirely. In this video, I'm going to give you some advice on how to provoke the interest of your audience and ensure they stay engaged throughout your presentation. I've got a question for you. How do you motivate all of your audience to engage with the contents of your presentation? Take a few moments to give that some thought. You might think that beginning your presentation by trying to second guess what will motivate each and every audience member to really attend to the contents of your presentation would be an impossible task. But it really isn't. In fact, I've just demonstrated how you can achieve this. Did you spot what I did? Well, I opened the introduction to this video by asking you a question rather than simply giving you an answer. Questions are catalysts for thinking. You can use questions at the beginning and throughout your presentation to motivate the audience to engage with the contents of your presentation and give the audience a role in interrogating the information that you provide in order to answer the questions that you've said. Of course, not all questions are created equal in terms of their capacity to engage an audience. And to this end, an important distinction you need to be aware of is the difference between convergent and divergent questions. Convergent questions tend to entail a specific correct answer, or at least a limited range of acceptable responses. An example of a convergent question might be something like, how is attention defined? Now, this question is gunning for a specific response. It's probably only going to distinguish between people in the audience that already know a little bit about the study of attention from those that don't. Once the correct answer has been given, it's pretty much game over for that line of questioning. The answer's been given, it's time to move on. Divergent questions tend to be less prescriptive in the required responses. Instead, they prompt the audience to think around the topic in question and produce responses that require follow-up and elaboration. A divergent alternative to the previous question might be something along the lines of, suppose someone wanted to really command the attention of an audience. What advice would you give them to this end? You probably noticed that there isn't a single correct or best response to the divergent question. Furthermore, you don't need to be acquainted with a particular fact or set of facts to address the question. In fact, the divergent question is inviting you to consider how your personal experiences might be used to address the question that's been said. Responses to divergent questions are usually much more conducive to follow-up and elaboration. For example, audience members might respond to the previous question by offering suggestions such as, tell the presenter to speak up. Now, in responding to such suggestions, a presenter would probably want to do more than just say, that's correct or that's incorrect. Instead, they would want to follow up on that suggestion in the hope they could achieve a more elaborate answer, which could then be used as a tool to tease out, clarify and illustrate more information about the topic at hand, in this case attention. In using divergent questions within your presentation, there are a few considerations you need to be aware of. The first is that you need to sequence your questions correctly. What I mean by this is you need to be aware of the purpose of asking the question so that you can consider where it's best placed. For example, if you wanted to provoke the interest of an audience, then you'd be best served by putting the question before any relevant exposition. Conversely, if you wanted to check how much the audience knew or understood about a topic, then you're best served by putting the question or questions after the relevant exposition. You should avoid simply throwing a succession of questions at the audience without explicitly addressing and bringing each one of them to some kind of conclusion. If you don't do this, then it's quite likely that the audience will get stuck pondering the response to a particular question and then be utterly distracted for some or all of the remainder of your presentation. Make sure you give the audience enough time to respond to your questions. Try and avoid the temptation to immediately answer your own questions and provide all the follow-up and elaboration that's necessary just because you don't like awkward silences. If you immediately respond to your own questions, it completely defeats the point of the entire exercise. And it will also discourage the audience from engaging with future questions that you said, because, well, you've just illustrated that you're perfectly happy to do all the work for them. If you really can't stand the idea of protracted periods of silence in response to questions within your presentation, then try explicitly giving the audience a short period of time to think of a response. If this doesn't work, try giving them a prompt, perhaps in the form of an example. And if this still doesn't work, try rephrasing the question. Sometimes, when audiences are reluctant to respond to a presenter's questions, it's not them being awkward or overly shy, it's simply that the question hasn't been phrased very clearly and that the audience is waiting for clarification before they offer a response. I hope you found this video helpful. If so, please do hit the like button. If you haven't done so already, then why not subscribe to my channel if you want to learn more about how psychology can help you study more effectively. If you want to know when I post new content, just turn on the bell notification icon. Thanks very much.